You don't fear loneliness. You fear what it forces you to face, yourself. Being alone has become one of the cruelest trials of modern life, not because there's no one around, but because you can no longer escape your own presence. When the noise fades, when no one is texting, calling, or pulling your attention, something else starts to echo, a discomfort, a tension, a gnawing emptiness that's been waiting in the background all along. And make no mistake, this emptiness isn't new. It didn't appear the moment you were left alone. It's been there, lurking beneath the surface of distractions, rushed conversations, fleeting relationships, the endless scroll of notifications. Loneliness doesn't reveal a new pain. It simply unmasks the one you've always avoided, the distance between who you truly are and who you think you should be. And that chasm, that's where your deepest anguish lives. It's not the lack of others that breaks you. It's the absence of connection with yourself. Søren Kierkegaard, a philosopher who explored the depth of human despair, didn't see this anguish as a failure. He saw it as a message, a spiritual siren, warning you that you've drifted too far from your own truth. For Kierkegaard, despair in solitude isn't weakness. It's the soul begging you to wake up, because loneliness is a mirror, a brutal one that reflects the terrifying freedom of being yourself and the enormous responsibility that comes with that freedom. We run from silence because it strips us bare. It reveals how lost we truly are when there's no one else to play a role for. And yet, on the opposite shore of this existential ocean, Arthur Schopenhauer waits with a different vision, one not of fear, but of freedom. Schopenhauer doesn't fear solitude. He welcomes it. He even reveres it. For him, the ability to be alone is not a punishment, but a badge of inner strength. It's a sign of a mind that no longer depends on external noise to feel alive. Solitude, in his view, is the sanctuary of deep souls, those who have found both home and fortress within their own being. This video is an invitation to walk between these two poles, the hollow ache of loneliness and the quiet power of solitude, between running from yourself and gathering the courage to sit with who you are, because what you feel, this subtle pain, this unnamed ache, is not a glitch. It's a signal, a sacred request for you to stop running. Stop shrinking yourself to be accepted. Stop losing yourself in everyone else's story. It's time to come back home, not to a place, but to a presence, your own. Here, I won't give you comforting lies. I won't tell you to just stay busy or think happy thoughts. What I offer is honesty, a mirror, a doorway, because when you understand what it means to truly be alone, you unlock the most liberating transformation possible. And if you're still watching, if you've made it this far, it means something inside you is done with running. Something in you is finally ready to look inward. So let me say this clearly. The emptiness you feel is not loneliness. It's longing. Longing for the parts of yourself you've abandoned just to belong. Most people think loneliness is an emotional void, but Kierkegaard saw it as an existential mirror. The raw, unfiltered encounter with who you are when there's nothing left to hide behind. And that experience, it's not easy, but it's the beginning of your return. According to Søren Kierkegaard, the human condition is defined by a relentless inner tension between who we truly are and who we think we must become to be accepted. Rather than searching for our personal truth, we choose instead to adapt, to fit into a world obsessed with appearances, status, and achievement. We build an identity not to express ourselves, but to survive. And then, tragically, we cling to this mask as if it were our real face. But then comes silence, loneliness, and with it, the slow unraveling of the performance. When there is no audience left to impress, no one to validate our scripted persona, we are forced to confront a haunting question. How far have I drifted from my true self? And that is the moment Kierkegaard described as existential despair, a state of suffering not triggered by loss, rejection, or hardship, but by something deeper, a spiritual fracture. Despair, he said, is not ordinary sadness. It is the painful realization that you are not living in alignment with your essence. It is the silent ache that arises from wearing a mask for too long. And loneliness, with its cruel clarity, exposes this wound because it strips away the noise that once drowned out your truth. But as paradoxical as it sounds, despair is not a dead end. It is a beginning. It is the first honest signal that something inside you is no longer willing to lie. Kierkegaard believed this confrontation is sacred, that being alone is not a tragedy, but a portal, a chance to begin the most important work of your life, becoming yourself. Yet this work is not gentle, it is not comfortable. It demands courage to explore the unknown terrain within. It requires humility to admit, I don't know who I truly am. And it calls for perseverance, because discovering yourself is not a weekend project. It is a lifelong unfolding. To begin this journey, you must be willing to shed the roles, the characters, the masks you've worn to please others, to meet expectations, to feel worthy. Loneliness then becomes a test, a spiritual trial. It forces you to confront a question most people run from. Who are you when no one is watching? And more importantly, can you stand to be with yourself? Or are you always seeking someone, anyone to escape from the silence? Kierkegaard warned, to flee from silence is to flee from truth. And when you flee from truth, you end up living a life without roots, without direction, without meaning. You might be constantly surrounded by people, but never truly present. You'll live in connection, but never in communion. But what if, instead of running from loneliness, you welcomed it? What if you treated silence not as a threat, but as a doorway? This is where a new perspective enters, not loneliness as anguish, but solitude as strength. And no one expressed this more powerfully than Arthur Schopenhauer. In the next part, we'll explore his striking vision of solitude, not as a burden to endure, but as a sanctuary to embrace. Because for Schopenhauer, to be alone was not a punishment, but a profound affirmation of personal depth. If this message resonates with you, click the subscribe button. Your support helps bring these deeper truths to more people who, like you, are ready to stop running and start remembering who they are. While Kierkegaard urges us to turn inward with urgency and discomfort, Schopenhauer invites us to stay in that space with clarity and pride. For him, being alone isn't tragic. It is noble. In his sharp, unflinching philosophy, he dismantles society's romantic illusions about constant connection and offers a radical truth. The deeper a person becomes, the more they withdraw from the shallow noise of the crowd. In his work, Aphorisms for the Wisdom of Life, Schopenhauer makes it clear, great minds do not seek solitude as a retreat. They seek it as a refuge from mediocrity. Because for him, constant interaction is not nourishment, it's numbing, it's noise. And the rarest strength in the modern world is the ability to be fully alone and yet feel fully alive. The ordinary person craves noise, company, and constant activity, not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear of silence, fear of stillness, fear of being left alone with their own thoughts. They chase conversations, social media, casual distractions, because deep inside, they are terrified of the void that silence reveals. But the wise person, according to Schopenhauer, walks a very different path. He does not flee silence. He embraces it, not because he is cold, but because he has cultivated something the average person never does: inner sufficiency. The wise individual has learned to be nourished not by applause or external affection, but by what resides within. His peace is not dependent on the noise of the world. It is anchored in his own clarity. But let's be clear, this kind of presence does not arise from a few motivational quotes or weekend self-help exercises. It is built slowly, through effort, through solitude, through confronting truths no one else can face for you. Schopenhauer understood this. That is why he didn't offer comforting words. He offered confrontation. His philosophy is not a hug. It's a mirror, one that forces you to see the part of yourself that still depends on validation, approval, and attention to feel alive. He said that those who constantly need to be surrounded by others have yet to discover the depths of their own being, that their addiction to presence is merely a mask for spiritual emptiness. And this is why, for Schopenhauer, solitude is a mark of strength, not because it isolates you, but because it reveals you. When the applause fades, when the messages stop, when no one is watching, who are you? Can you still exist fully without depending on someone else's approval, affection, or attention? The truly solitary individual, Schopenhauer believed, is someone who has become a world unto themselves, a complete universe. They don't isolate out of arrogance. They withdraw because they've discovered how rare depth really is in the outside world. But make no mistake, this view comes with sacrifice. To be alone is not easy. To face yourself, your thoughts, your regrets, your fears, requires more bravery than any crowd will ever demand. And that is why, for many, solitude becomes unbearable, because when all the external noise fades, the internal monsters begin to speak, and that's where the true test begins. Can you sit with your memories without running? Can you face your frustrations without numbing them? Can you live with your own silence without rushing to fill it? According to Schopenhauer, those who master solitude are the ones who've transformed their inner world into a sanctuary, a space of clarity, reflection, and quiet power. This isn't something you learn in a rush. It isn't something you find in crowds or in the shallow praise of others. It is something you build slowly, in silence, in discomfort, with the patience of someone rebuilding themselves brick by brick from the inside out. And here, right here, is where Kierkegaard and Schopenhauer meet. Two very different minds, one rooted in existential urgency, the other in intellectual detachment, but both understood the same profound truth. Being alone becomes unbearable only when your inner world is still a void. Loneliness turns into peace only when you have something within to fill the space. And that leads us to the next question, perhaps the most uncomfortable of all. Why does silence hurt so much? What is it inside us or missing from us that makes being alone feel like agony? In the next part, we'll go deeper. We'll explore this inner emptiness not just through philosophy, but through the lens of psychology. Because this emptiness you feel, It's not just the absence of something. It's the constant presence of lack, a silent hole inside you that no relationship, no status, no distraction can ever seem to fill. You've felt it on long nights, on quiet Sunday afternoons, in the pause between one notification and the next. And the worst part is, this emptiness doesn't disappear when someone walks into your life, because it was never about them. It was always about you. The part of you that you've been avoiding, the part of you that you've abandoned in the rush to keep busy. Stay connected, feel alive, and when the distractions finally stop, you're left with a painful realization. Maybe I've lived most of my life far from who I really am. This emptiness you feel, it's not just a passing feeling. It is the echo of your own absence within yourself. Psychology sheds light on this truth. From childhood, we're conditioned to look outward, to seek approval, to meet standards not our own. We're told what success means, what beauty looks like, what love should feel like, and we mold ourselves accordingly. In trying to fit in, we drift further and further from our own center. We become experts at performance, but amateurs at presence. We learn how to appear, but forget how to feel. This creates a quiet but persistent dissonance. We build a self that works well in the world, efficient, agreeable, adaptable, but one that isn't real. And when the external world goes quiet, when the house is empty, the phone is silent, the distractions stop, that artificial self begins to collapse. What emerges from the rubble is not a blank slate, but the very parts of us we've silenced for years. The wounded child still longing for safety, the unspoken desire that was buried under fear, the frustration we never dared to express, the fear we've run from all our lives. This is the real emptiness. Not a void, but the weight of everything we've suppressed just to be accepted. It is the emotional price we pay for betraying our truth too many times. But there's an even deeper layer, a life without inner direction. When you live only in reaction, chasing others' expectations, measuring yourself by what the world wants, you lose your compass, and the soul begins to starve, because what the soul needs is not approval, but meaning, presence, and purpose. And when these are replaced by hollow goals, constant comparison, and a never-ending chase for attention, the result is inevitable. We lose ourselves. That inner emptiness is not your enemy. It's not something to hide or fix. It's a message, a signal from the unconscious saying, something here is not right. It's asking you to pause, to reflect, to return. And this leads us into the next chapter, transforming loneliness into solitude, turning that emptiness into sacred space, turning being alone into an act of conscious choice, not punishment. But here's the truth. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It isn't magic. It is work. It is truth-telling. It is the willingness to look inward with radical honesty. The difference between loneliness and solitude is how you relate to silence. In loneliness, you feel abandoned by the world. In solitude, you reclaim yourself. Loneliness is absence. Solitude is presence. And that presence is earned through self-awareness and emotional maturity. It begins with one simple, courageous act: acceptance. Accepting that there is a void, that pain exists, that somewhere along the way you lost yourself, not with shame, not with blame, but with compassion. This is where healing starts, because as long as you resist what you feel, you'll keep numbing it with distractions, and in doing so, you keep loneliness alive. Acceptance is ground zero. From there, the descent begins. And make no mistake, it is a descent to sit with yourself in full silence, without escape, without noise, is one of the bravest things you will ever do. It means entering the center of your own labyrinth, hearing the restless mind, facing the cries of your soul, meeting the traumas, the truths, the parts you've long buried. But this descent is sacred, because this is where wholeness begins. Solitude isn't about being alone. It's about inhabiting yourself fully. It's learning to hold your own presence with dignity, with grace, with strength. A vital step in transforming loneliness into solitude is learning to truly listen to yourself, not through filters, not with explanations, but with presence. To stop, to breathe, to observe without judgment what rises from within. Ask yourself, what am I really missing? What do I constantly expect from others that I could start giving to myself? What am I running from, chasing, consuming, day after day? These questions sting, but they shatter the illusions. They tear down the walls of escape and invite light into the hidden corners of your being. Solitude demands space, inner space. And this space is not built through noise or distraction. It is nurtured with habits that encourage presence, slow, meaningful reading, sitting quietly with your thoughts, contemplating the wind through trees, creating art, studying ideas that stretch your mind, meditation, nature, stillness, anything that connects you to what is eternal and doesn't rely on outside validation to feel meaningful. Once you begin cultivating this inner space, you'll realize that being alone is not a punishment. It's a privilege. It is in solitude that the most powerful thoughts are born, the most grounded decisions are made, and the deepest values take root. But let's be clear. Solitude is not isolation. It's not cutting yourself off from the world. It's no longer needing the world to feel like you exist. It's the difference between choosing company and clinging to it, between loving someone out of overflow and needing them to fill a hole. People who truly embrace solitude don't avoid relationships. They show up to them more honestly because they no longer ask others to heal what only they can face within. This shift is nothing short of an inner revolution. It changes how you show up in silence, how you show up for yourself. You realize you are not alone. You are with yourself. And when this relationship is whole, it is more than enough. But there is a subtle enemy on this path, one that constantly pulls you back, the compulsion to flee from yourself. Even after choosing the path inward, you'll be tempted by distraction, by instant gratification, by the addictive noise of the modern world. These small daily seductions, scrolling, consuming, escaping, are not harmless. They sabotage your return home, and they push you back into the very void you've been trying to fill. This is what we'll explore next. Why fleeing from yourself is not just avoidance. It is the silent origin of nearly all emotional suffering. If what you're hearing speaks to you, you'll find even more in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's essential insights and gives you tools to build this inner journey. The link is in the pinned comment. And remember this, you may be surrounded by people with endless plans and non-stop notifications and still be fleeing from yourself. In fact, that's the modern condition, a grand performance of distraction. We run from ourselves constantly through overwork, obsessive productivity, emotional dependency, endless scrolling, shopping for joy, or routines that numb rather than heal. Every new stimulus becomes another layer that covers the one question we're most afraid to ask. Who am I when everything goes quiet? Because deep down we know what we'll find may not match the version we've spent so long projecting to the world, but that avoidance has a price. A steep one. It shows up as chronic anxiety, quiet despair, and the haunting feeling that something essential is missing from your life. When you become disconnected from yourself, everything you try to build begins to hollow out. Your relationships feel shallow. Your goals lose meaning. Your daily life turns into a repetitive cycle of actions devoid of soul or purpose. It's like standing inside a beautifully decorated house that echoes with emptiness. This is what Kierkegaard called silent despair, a life that looks fine on the outside but feels lost within. The most haunting part, most people live like this and don't even know it. The escape from the self has become so subtle, so normalized, that it has merged into daily routines and passed off as productivity, as ambition, as life. But living disconnected from your essence is not natural. And as long as this fracture within remains, no partner will be enough, no success will satisfy, no accomplishment will bring peace. Because nothing external can ever compensate for what is missing internally. Real freedom doesn't come when you run. It begins the moment you stop, when you choose to stay, to turn inward, to meet yourself, not with shame, but with curiosity, to ask, who am I without the masks? What is this silence really trying to tell me? That is the turning point, when you decide, I will no longer be a stranger to myself. That is when your healing truly begins. But make no mistake, this path requires strength. Because once you stop fleeing, you begin to truly see, and some of what you see may be uncomfortable. That's why you need structure, clarity, and the right tools. Because facing yourself is just the beginning. The next step, the most important one, is building a new, deeper relationship with the person you've neglected the most, yourself. Being alone doesn't have to mean being lost. It can mean returning, reconnecting, rebuilding. Loneliness hurts when it is filled with avoidance, denial, and despair. But solitude heals when it is nurtured with awareness. It is in this sacred solitude that you learn to think clearly, to feel fully, and to live authentically. Kierkegaard taught us that anguish is a signal, not a failure. Schopenhauer reminded us that solitude is strength, not weakness. Psychology helped us see that emptiness isn't a defect, it's a symptom. And I've walked with you through every part of this journey, inviting you to look inward without fear, without filters, without fleeing. Now you have a choice. You can keep dissolving into the noise, hoping the next distraction will fix what's broken. Or you can choose to begin again, in silence, with courage, and in full presence. You can continue to depend on others to make you feel whole, or you can finally realize that wholeness was always within you. And when you make solitude your home, when you learn to be enough for yourself, you will stop accepting crumbs, not from others, not from the world, not even from yourself. Now I want to hear from you. Write in the comments. What did you discover about yourself through this video? You don't need to have everything figured out. Even a single honest question can be a powerful beginning. Your reflection might inspire someone else on the same path of self-recovery. And if something in this message stirred your soul, subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't give you shortcuts. We offer awareness. We offer clarity. We offer challenge. And one more thing, don't stop here. The next video may be the piece you've been missing all along. Let it guide you one step further.